Hey guys, it's Misha and welcome back to my channel. So today I want to react to this video that came out yesterday where detransitioners and transgender people talk about whether or not they think that minors should be able to transition. I was pleasantly surprised to see that Jubilee is including detransitioners in this conversation, so I'm very excited to talk about this. I think that any opportunity we get to bring awareness to detransitioners, we have to take that opportunity because they don't get the mainstream media coverage that they deserve. But that is a very necessary part of, having this informed decision as an adult on whether or not you should medically transition. So only showing how transitioning is flowers, sunshine, rainbows. If you're trans, it's all beautiful. Let's not talk about the surgeries, the complications, everything that could go wrong potentially. They only talk about the good side of transitioning, and that can be very dangerous, especially when we're talking about children. Gender affirming healthcare, which is really just mutilating and sterilizing children. So before we start watching, please make sure you are already subscribed and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any of my videos.
Raise your hand if you feel attacked by the opposite side. Gender-related treatment should be banned for minors.
It should.
Medical transition is no place for a child.
So Shapeshifters in this, if you guys don't know, I interviewed him for a video where he talked about his experience with transitioning and detransitioning. You should definitely check that out because he has been through a lot, and I'm so happy that he has this opportunity to potentially reach more people before they make such a life-changing decision, especially when it's involving children.
So I did transition as a minor teenager who had a lot of mental health issues and had been sexually exploited and hated my body. That was twisted into, no, you're just a boy in the wrong body. And it ended with me having my first ever medical intervention being a double mastectomy at 16 before any hormones, before anything else.
I mean, that is so heartbreaking. Before going on hormones, before even reaching 18, you can't get a tattoo, you can't drink, but you can get a sex reassignment surgery. You can get a double mastectomy. Where's the logic in this? Except for this delusion that we have to affirm you, affirm you, affirm you. These are children. They don't know what they want. And it's not saying oh, kids are stupid or whatever. No, but if adults are detransitioning, why should we allow children to make a life-changing decision like this and get surgery before even growing up and thinking, oh, maybe I was just uncomfortable with my body because I was going through puberty, or maybe something traumatic happened to me and I need to go to therapy for that.
And because of transitioning at such a young age, in the past 6 months, I have watched my body fall apart and waste away in front of me. I have constant joint pain. I've watched my muscle mass waste away. I've watched my vocal cords hurt. I don't know if I'll ever be able to carry a child. The evidence we have suggests that the best way to figure out if gender dysphoria persists into adulthood is to let them grow up. Because a lot of these kids will grow out of it, and many of them will just grow up and end up being gay or gender nonconforming. Yep.
More people need to talk about this. A lot of detransitioners talk about how they were just gay and they had internalized homophobia. Or for the girls, there's a huge spike in female to male transitioners and then detransitioners who say that it was their internalized misogyny that made them transition, right? They didn't want to go through life experiencing the sexism that modern day feminists are telling them they're going to experience no matter what if they're born a woman. The male to female who detransition, they often talk about how it was actually internalized homophobia.
We're going to be honest, every major medical organization supports gender affirming care for trans youth. They say
absolutely
it's safe and it's life-saving.
It's safe sterilizing children, mutilating them. That is safe and life-saving, especially considering the fact that they want to give children puberty blockers. And we don't even know the short-term side effects. We don't know all of them yet, but we have no idea about the long-term side effects.
And there are numerous studies that back that up.
The study that backs it up for puberty blockers is the Dutch protocol, and the same scientists—
I have 10 studies that I can bring to you right now.
The same scientists that brought that up have since rolled it back and said it was never supposed to be applied the way it has. The American medical industry, we all know, is money hungry and has gone off the rails.
But trans kids are valid, and it's not a decision that they're making.
Right.
It's healthcare.
Unfortunately, a lot of doctors, regardless of trans, whatever, doesn't matter, want to focus on treatment rather than prevention. So if you come in and you say, I am confused about my gender identity, yeah, let's treat it immediately. Let's start giving you hormones. Let's start, referring you to a surgeon instead of prevention, right? Saying, okay, what's making you feel this way? What can we do to prevent you to have to go through all of these painful and complicated surgeries and hormones? Is there something you can do to feel more comfortable in your body? Can we wait and see at least until you're 18 if this is something that'll go away on its own. No. Immediate affirmation, immediate surgery, immediate profit.
So there is such thing as gender fluid. How do you know that this kid is not going to change their gender expression later on?
Yes, Shape is killing it, especially with the gender fluid thing. I can change my gender. I'm on a spectrum, right? That's what they say. Gender's on a spectrum. Gender is a social construct. There's no way to prove that you're a woman or a man because it's all about internal perception. If gender is fluid, then how can a doctor know what the true gender of this child and sitting across from them really is, going based off of this gender ideology that they're preaching, right? You can't.
We really actually don't have studies on children that are taken over long term, like over 10 years, 20 years. You've only been on testosterone 14 years. One of the oldest trans men, Buck Angel, he almost died from testosterone. You're saying right now it saved your life, you may still die from it. You don't know. You're still
happy.
Exactly.
You're happy, okay. What about the detransitioner sitting across from you?
Around how we talk about suicide is a very dangerous one in this community. You know, my parents were told, do you want a dead daughter or a living son? That's not an appropriate way to talk about that.
Such manipulation. And they know exactly what they're doing when they tell parents that. And the thing about that is, even as I say this in like every video related to transgenderism, the suicide rate is not decreasing as we as a society are becoming more progressive and affirming everyone's gender identity, right? Then why isn't the suicide rate decreasing? Also, there's no good stats to back up the fact that after transition, trans people feel less suicidal. None. Short term, almost like it's a placebo. Yes, there's some proof that they feel better immediately after, but then the suicide rate goes up again.
What I'm going to say is we insult children, our youth, so much by taking away their autonomy and their own agency over their own decisions and insulting that they know who they are. Like an adult knows who they are more than they do. No one knows who I am more than I do. Right.
Are you a child? Or are you sitting here as an adult? Try speaking to a 10-year-old. Children are not little adults. They can't make that kind of decision for themselves. They are children. If you're gonna go down that path and say, kids are just little adults, kids know everything about the world, what's stopping that from people starting to advocate for pedophilia? And saying children are responsible enough to make the decision what happens to their bodies. Children can go sleep with a 50-year-old man. That's the next step. That's what we see MAP saying. It's a very slippery slope. You can't say that children can make that kind of decision as like a 10-year-old boy or 10-year-old girl, but we're saying, no, treat children like little adults. They're not. They're kids, especially like around 18, 19 years old. I was doing things I'm looking back at now, I'm like, why did I do that? That was such a childish thing for me to do. If I can see that about me as like 18, 19 years old, and then you look at 10-year-olds and you think 10-year-olds can make that kind of life-changing decision, that's actually crazy.
And it's always been that way. I've always known who I was. I've never felt like I was in the wrong body. I just had to adjust my body.
I never felt like I was in the wrong body. I just had to adjust my body. That doesn't make sense.
I have a question. Do you believe minors should be able to get tattoos or plastic surgery or consent to the list of other...
Hold on,
I understand they are different things.
Kids can't make a decision about getting a tattoo. Kids can't drink. They're not responsible enough. Kids can decide that they are actually a boy trapped in the wrong body and then get hormones and surgeries, and all of that is fine. But they can't get a tattoo. They could regret the tattoo. Even if they get a tattoo at like, let's say 16, and then they're like, oh man, I really wish I didn't get this tattoo. They can get the tattoo removed. Yeah. If they're 16 and they get a double mastectomy, what are you gonna tell them when they're older and they say, oh, I'm actually not a boy? What then? Get a boob job? Those aren't their actual body parts. Those body parts are long gone and they can never get their body parts back. They can't breastfeed their children with the young girls who are transitioning and then detransitioning.
Just doling out surgeries for children, that's not happening.
I had a
anywhere.
letter from a therapist.
Yes, it is. What can you expect when you tell therapists that if you don't affirm these people, you're gonna get your license taken away because you're transphobic? Of course they're gonna be like, oh, okay, you think that you're a boy, you're a girl. They wanna keep their license. It's not moral. But that's what therapists are doing.
I had a letter from a therapist in a single visit at the gender clinic office
and
before I had
that was abuse
the first.
from that therapist who did not psychoanalyze
awful.
the rest
That
of your
should
issues.
not happen. Right, and that shouldn't
because
have- shouldn't
your
have
issues
happened
weren't
to you.
being trans. There were a lot of other issues that you're
I have a
addressing
diagnosis
right now.
of gender dysphoria as
And
well.
you shouldn't. You were misdiagnosed.
No, I have one.
Right.
Yeah, you had to get a second opinion, honey.
And how was how was I supposed to do that when my parents were told
That's
that I
not
would
your
kill
fault.
myself?
But your
Yeah, that's not your
parents,
fault.
your parents,
Their biggest crime in all this was trusting in a medical system that they thought would help me, and the professionals apparently not doing the right thing here.
I understand, but your
Yeah,
parents were
absolutely
responsible for the decisions that were made on your behalf.
Look at how they jump from it's your fault, it's your parents' fault, it's the doctor's fault, blaming everything except the actual culprit here, which is this trans ideology that you are whatever you say you are, and we should give you immediate access to hormones and surgery, even if you're a child.
Social media brainwashes teens to believe that they're trans.
I have like
Everyone better run to that chair. Everyone. I don't know why they're walking. You should be sprinting to the chair.
I have to agree on that one. Like, there's this thing about it.
People who get into being queer or trans, because it's trendy, and I know that's a really controversial statement to make as a trans person, but I have seen it, I have experienced it. Apps like TikTok give a lot of these kids so much misinformation and lead to people thinking they're trans. Everyone just wants to belong and find an identity, especially when they're young.
Whoever is leaning towards that or looking towards being trans for answers was always someone that felt that way or felt some type of way about their gender or their identity or the way they present themselves. They're just gonna go that way.
Disagree. You can be uncomfortable with your body while you're going through puberty. A lot of people are. I think most people are. As discussed before, I don't think it necessarily means that they actually feel some sort of gender dysphoria. But when they're seeing these, TikToks, as they even said, they admitted TikTok is a huge problem here, and then they see these TikToks saying, if you feel this, you're trans, or there's a good chance that you're trans, when it's really just puberty.
For my mental issues that were not addressed, I still struggle with internalized homophobia that pushed me into transition in the first place. I struggle with borderline personality disorder, body dysmorphia, I'm on a spectrum. I was mercilessly bullied at school for my femininity, constantly being told that I'm not a real man, that I'm a sissy. And when I came out to my parents as gay, they took me to therapists and tried to do pretty much conversion therapy on me, which failed.
Being a feminine man, being a tomboy, whatever, they'll say that means you're trans, that's a good sign you're trans, which is why I think we need balance. I don't think we need to have these strict gender roles in place. You can present as, whatever you want. Doesn't mean you're not the gender you were born as.
When I transitioned, the first thing my mom said to me was, can't you just be gay?
Can you though? Because there's a lot of research that shows that these children who are saying that they're transgender, they grow up, they were just gay. So it's a possibility. It's okay to ask. And actually therapists should be asking that. This person, no, they were transgender. Okay, cool. But as a child, you might not really know, and you shouldn't be, getting these hormones or surgeries as a child.
I want to just make it very clear that trans people are not dealing with mental health because they're trans.
Absolutely.
I disagree. I feel like transgender is definitely, and elderly trans people afford for it to be classified as mental illness, so it's covered by insurance. Otherwise, why are you getting the surgeries to medical condition?
The dysphoria is a medical condition.
It is, but it's in your head. I would say that you have some kind of mental disorder if you're trying to mimic a stereotype of opposite sex.
Yes, with actual gender dysphoria, they should be going to therapy, and then surgery and hormones should be the last resort. That's what you hear a lot of, transgender people with actual gender dysphoria say, that this was like the last resort for them to be able to live their life happily. And there needs to be a protocol for these doctors. Instead of immediate affirmation, they need to explore every other possibility of what is causing this for them. Was there some sort of trauma involved? Therapists know this, and for some reason, only when it comes to transgenderism do they throw out all that training, into the trash can and say, no, yeah, you are definitely transgender, because they're scared.
I have a gender dysphoria diagnosis, I always have, but I'm still where I am today.
Can I give you my honest opinion? I think that you were probably misdiagnosed.
I don't think I was.
So
Do you
do
feel
have gender
dysphoria in your body?
I certainly do now.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Well, yeah.
You want to talk about trauma? That word gets thrown around a lot. This is trauma. This is traumatizing for these detransitioners, for what they're going through, what they've been through.
There are as many intersex people as there are redheaded people on the planet.
This again. Okay, this is false, inflated statistic. It's not 1.7%. It's like 0.018% actually. And okay, let's talk about that very small amount of people who are, intersex, who have this medical anomaly. So the prevalence of intersex people is actually 100 times lower than Sterling's statistic because of the way that they define it, right? They say if you have an issue with your ovaries or your testes, or they're not big enough or something like that, you are automatically intersex, which is not the correct way to actually calculate the small percentage of people with atypical sexual development. There are a lot of different syndromes, but most of these people are totally fine with living as either a man or a woman. This has literally nothing to do with the non-binary people now or gender fluid people now saying that I don't feel like a man, I don't feel like a woman because I don't like to wear skirts. I like to wear makeup as a boy. What does that have to do with your biology? And I can talk about why I think that the whole term, gender now is anti-scientific. It's used in a completely ridiculous way to mean nothing. It just means nothing. It means whatever the person says it means to them, to the woke mob at least, because gender used to be synonymous with sex. It's the change in definition which actually prevents doctors and therapists from having a good protocol set in place to prevent detransitioners.
So gender and male and female is not the same thing.
Biological sex are different things.
Yeah.
I disagree with the having sex and gender being two different things.
Okay,
I
well,
believe
that's a
them to
fact.
be one.
Sex is biological. Looking at their definition of gender, there can be infinite genders. No one can tell you a certain amount of genders because it's all about how you feel. It has nothing to do with chromosomes or your primary sex characteristics. And that would be fine. We can just let these people be delusional and we can, move on living in reality. But they bring children into this. And they bring freedom of speech into this by saying you have to affirm them or that's hate speech. And they say that if you're not letting children get double mastectomies, that is a hate crime, that is genocide, and you should be murdered. So that's why we have to talk about it.
God you speak of, the first God that intersex people get to meet is the doctor, because it's up to their discretion of just what you're going to be when they mutilate their body to be a man or a woman, and that is not fair.
That's what you're advocating for when you say that minors should be able to transition.
I was born in a female body, but I was never a girl. Never, ever, ever. I can't explain why, but that is my truth. That is the fact. That is who I've always been.
But you're a biological woman. You can have gender dysphoria. Okay, fine. You can present male. Okay. But you are a biological woman. As long as people start to deny biological reality, that's where we can't even have a conversation. To say I was never a woman, if you were born a biological woman, if you are accepting biological reality and not forcing people to affirm your gender identity, whatever, okay, I'll call you a man. Okay, fine, cool. As long as it's, you ask me respectfully, instead of saying I was always a man. I was never a woman, and it's hate speech if you don't agree with that. That's delusion. I'm not gonna play along with that. I'm not gonna be anti-scientific so that I don't hurt your feelings.
There's no way that I'm gonna look up at this guy at some guide and be like, oh yeah, you made me as a mistake.
That's not even what they preach. They say that they were born in the wrong body, and therefore that's a mistake, right?
The LGBTQ plus community is not as accepting as they claim.
I've lost people that I thought they liked me for me and it didn't matter what I was.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, detransitioning was the thing that I've been called a traitor.
Yeah, if you question anything, you're out of the cult, which is definitely what this is. It is a cult. They're no longer your family or, supporting you. Also, these are just the people that are brave enough to talk about their experience detransitioning. There are so many detransitioners who are afraid of losing that community, facing this backlash. They don't speak up against this, but I'm sure we'll see more as time goes on.
In some ways, it's empowering because it feels like even though all this happened, you're being seen as an individual. But it's also very isolating because you don't have really that community support that other places get.
Yeah, these videos are so important, and a huge shout out to all the detransitioners who were able to share their experiences. And that's all for today's video, guys. Please make sure you comment below if you think that children should be allowed to medically transition. Remember to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.